Good evening. I'm Greer McGeary, President of Seahorse Victoria. My guest tonight is Lee Taube of Transspace. Welcome, Lee.
Thanks for having me.
And before we get around to what Transspace is, a little bit about yourself. When did you sort of understand that you were a little bit different to what you're being brought up as?
Probably kindergarten, I would say. Probably earliest memories, if we're going back on earliest memories. And always wanted to hang out with the boys and not the girls, and I kind of loved digging in the yard, all those kind of things. And I didn't ever really feel like a girl.
When you say you like hanging out, was it that sort of physical strength type activities, really running and climbing and playing with Tonka toys?
Oh, absolutely. I love my Power Rangers. And I remember others saying, they're dollies. And I'm like, no, they're action figures.
How did that impact on, maybe the way you were being brought up or going to school like that in those early years?
It wasn't really a problem until probably like puberty, really, because I sort of, I hung out with the boys and I seemed to fit in very well. So it wasn't too much of an issue socially. Like, I got on really well with the boys, and I loved wearing the gumboots and digging and that kind of stuff. And I used to be very good at down ball. I'd always win at that. Yes, and football and all those stereotypical kind of things.
With that, wanting to be, with the boys, doing all those, as you say, stereotypical boy things, because of where you were, what sort of pressure from, say, the peer girls in your classes?
It wasn't really a problem until puberty, because I didn't really connect with the girls and they didn't really want to connect with me, and that was fabulous.
Into the jeans and flannelette shirt, as it were.
And the overalls and all of that, and the boots, and yes, I had that very 90s look.
Were you ever sort of forced, or not so much forced as peer pressure to sort of dress femininely?
Yeah, probably more like later sort of puberty. And I tried to be feminine for tried for a solid 6 months. I tried to be a straight girl, and it just didn't work. I gave it a real go. I tried to wear dresses and makeup, and I did feel like I was in drag.
That's one of the funny things, I suppose, with me. I remember visiting family over in Adelaide, and I'm waiting for a tram, and some old codger comes up to me and says, "Oh, where do you perform?" No, I don't. So with feeling, you want to be basically one of the boys, as it were, did that have an influence on, the type of subject matters that you picked at school?
School, it was pretty basic. I mean, I did enjoy woodwork when I got to do it. And I really didn't like home economics, and I had a bit of a phobia of sewing machines. But that was because, there was a bully at school that set up the pins so that it would break every time I put the foot on the pedal. So who knows whether that was gender related or just general school bullying or whatnot. Yeah.
So you never felt sort of bullied or any sort of sense of people who were looking at you with a bit of disdain?
I mean, they probably did, but I didn't really notice that much. Certainly got called a tomboy and all that when I was quite little. Didn't really bother me that much. But it's more, I think, the bullying more when you're sort of high school, you get teased. Anyone gets teased for having a funny last name, let alone being, a bit sort of different with gender.
I just sort of fitted in well. I love running, even though I sort of knew something was a little bit different in the way I thought from a young age. But in my kindergarten period, I was in and out of hospital with a measles-related lung problem, and so you sort of get sort of taken away from the things. But by the time I sort of was into lower primary school and secondary school, I love my athletics and things like that. Sort of, did you get really into sporty stuff?
Yes, it was a great reason to get out of the school classroom, to do the little athletics and all that kind of thing. I loved it. It was the best wag. Yeah, because you'd get like you were allowed to whack by going to all the athletics things. Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. What part of little athletics you like? The more the running or the jumping or?
Yeah, the running. Yeah, sort of. I like sort of the marathon, sort of the slow running because you
Yeah.
could sort of you weren't expected to race. You could take your time.
One of the things I found with athletics is that it good for coordination, doing things with your hands as well as all those little motor skills. Did you sort of were you ever conscious of that type of thing? Like with when you somebody coaching you with running style or playing football or whatever.
My memories are more about I don't have to sit in the classroom and I get to be out in the sun. That's what I remember the most, and I get to hang out with my friends outside the room. That's what I remember. Yeah.
So, was there any other outside of school influences in that sort of teenage years?
Not that I can think of.
So you weren't really a rebellious sort of kid.
I was a little bit cheeky, I'll say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was a bit cheeky.
In that period of schooling and that you obviously through your later career obviously got onto university. Were you somebody who could just sort of study relatively easily?
In terms of maths and things, it didn't come naturally for me. Like I really struggled with statistics like later on in uni because I found maths quite difficult. So I felt like I had to work harder in those ways. But when it came to writing and ideas, that seemed to come a lot easier for me. Like I loved it when there were essays that I could be more creative without, the rules only being the marking rubric. Yeah, I like that sort of freedom and flexibility. So some things I struggled with, some things I found quite easy.
And that was pretty well right through your schooling, primary and secondary schooling.
Yeah, come to think of it. Yeah, I think so.
So avid reader along with that?
I didn't actually read a lot at all. I think I just found like writing and ideas would just sort of come to me.
So what made you choose the career, like university career then?
I was the first, in my family to finish year 12, let alone go to uni. So very, very different, I guess, way of doing it. And I remember I was working as a support worker for about 6 years in a psych hospital. And it was quite fun. I got to play pool and table tennis with all the clients that were in there. And it's sort of, I really loved that kind of work because you'd see people come into hospital, they'd really hit rock bottom and they'd lost everything. And then by the time that they'd be discharged from hospital, they weren't better, but they were kind of often, a little bit better than when they came in, even just a little bit. And that sort of change in people. So then I was sort of like, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do after high school. I actually did a certificate in hospitality management because I figured, well, that's not a bad idea. That'll lead somewhere. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. So then I was like, oh, well, I never learnt about cars. Maybe I'll do automotives so I can learn how to pull a car apart. So I learnt that. And then when I learnt how little they got paid and the back sprain and all that kind of stuff, I was like, maybe I'll do liberal arts. So I did that. I can't really tell you what liberal arts is. It's a little bit of everything. And then I got guaranteed entry to a Bachelor of Arts and I majored in psychology. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing. This makes sense. This feels good. This is what I want to
in
be.
that period of doing your Cert 4 and working as a support, how did you present to the workplace and everyone around you?
Yeah, that was quite interesting because people would sort of assume they would sometimes he or she me. Like I hadn't sort of medically transitioned or socially transitioned till I was about 19. And I did that while working in a psych hospital. I medically transitioned. So I remember, the nurses and all that kind of saying, well, you never made a convincing girl. They said that, a few of them said that. So no one was really surprised when I guess I came out as not being a girl. So medically transitioned with testosterone, had top surgery, hysterectomy, all that kind of stuff over the years. And I I mean, I'd sort of been using the name Lee for many years before I even medically transitioned, and I actually found that name thanks to Seahorse, actually. I remember I was 18 years old and I went to the first meeting that you may not remember me, but I remember going there, and there was a whole group of people, and, you know, it was my first time meeting anyone that was trans. And I remember saying, I have this practical problem. I need a name. And everyone got around and it was saying all these names and throwing names around, and when we'd done about 100 names, I'm like, Lee will do. So thank you, Seahorse, for helping me find my name.
That is really an interesting aspect of when you do start coming out, is having an idea of, well, what is my name? And, you know, like I was one of these that just could not think of a name. And one thing I seemed to understand was that a lot of people use their first or second initial, so that if they got male, it could be just as A or B or C, and then use a similar name based on the initial. And I just couldn't think of a name at all, and ended up bought a baby name book. I went through just about every name I could think of, and then I was running the fingers down the baby name book and on my given middle name, and which starts with G, and I thought, oh, queer.
Sometimes it just hits you when they were naming the names, and I heard Lee, and like, that'll do. And, you know, I like that, actually. Yeah, sometimes it just it feels good.
Somebody years ago came along to DT's one night when we were having what used to be called Seahorse Saturday. You know, I was getting people out, and they come in and say, oh, what's your name? And they go, what name do you want me to know? All the female name that you gave a name, and came back the next week and said, oh, I've changed it, because they never heard it said back to them. And when they heard it said back to them, it just did not resonate. And that was sort of an important aspect of being able to start feeling comfortable with yourself. As you said, you finally got around to, after 6 or 7 years after leaving school, doing uni and the psychology degree.
Yeah.
So what aspect of getting into psychology did you really like?
It just like felt good, like I guess studying psych and like learning about, like, I mean, people are very fascinating, and just sort of learning, you know, like I guess I was curious, and also having seen what it can do for people to help them. So, you know, it took me about, I would say about 10 years to get my master's degree. Some of it I did part-time and did it a bit slowly because I really struggled with the statistics. I felt like I had to work harder than some people, but then when it came to writing lab reports and things like that, I found that came very easy for me.
And did you find in that, obviously you've got to have a social connection, or that you mentioned you came along to Seahorse at a very young age, and the first time you really met trans people. But what about the transmasculine side of social support? How did that impact, or how did you find out about that?
Yeah, the transmasculine side, yeah. I mean, I remember back in the, you know, we're going back, 10, maybe 15 years ago, there wasn't really much at all for trans people. There was about Seahorse, and that was about it. And so I met other transmasculine people at, say, midsummer carnivals and youth groups and -18, and that's when, me and a few others created Y Gender, which was it's no longer around, but which they lasted 10 years. Good on them. It's a long time to being youth led. So it was Melbourne's first trans support group buy-in for young trans people, and they lasted 10 years, which is phenomenal.
I know through Seahorse we're always concerned about what happens after 18, and I know the shed, or was FDM shed it was called.
Oh, it's so fantastic. That's still going strong, I hear. Yes.
And that was really an important thing. But when Y Gender started up, helping to cater for that, under 30 or under 25, really 18 to 25, that first steps, because at Seahorse being now in our 50th year,
Congratulations.
The age group sort of slowly gets older because of other groups that started to cater for different age brackets, but different interests, really. So what did you find with Y gender that was really important, not just for you, but for those that you were helping?
Again, a lot of people, it was the first time meeting another trans person, but of a similar age, which was really hard back then, about 10, 15 years ago. There was Seahorse and there wasn't much more in Melbourne. So it was really powerful. A lot of people made friends through that, or connected, or found their name and their place in the world. And it's really beautiful that there was that. And I feel like the times are changing, that maybe there's a lot more youth centres that have, youth kind of trans and queer kind of groups. So maybe it was quite needed at the time.
Y gender there, I remember, I don't know if you recall, back around about 2014, there was Brenda Appleton, myself, there was Eric from Y gender, and Andrew from The Shed started up a monthly workshops for all those things that were common to the different groups. I think we worked out at one point there was at least 10 different little groups, and all very niche. I was the MC for most of these. I wonder why. But
because you're good at it.
But the thing that really stood out to me one day was with Eric at one of our workshops, and I got my folder with people's names and notes in it, and Eric gets up with the phone, and hold up the sheet of paper, my technology.
And the other technology.
The other technology.
But telephones, yeah.
With that aspect of technology having an impact on being able to connect with the younger people, what sort of things did you do in Y gender that really helped each other?
Well, my baby was the discussion group that I made, which was, we had a topic every month. I'd do the pizza run, we'd get pizzas, and we'd just talk, in the group about a topic, whether it would be coming out to family or, something like that. It was just a really beautiful space to connect. And I think I, probably learnt on-the-go facilitation skills that I wasn't trained, or I was just making it up as I was going along.
That sort of happened with me more so in my original career and in the public service and an operational career, and you sort of occasionally go along to a training thing for all public servants and end up, you take this little group into there and some other group there, and you think, well, how am I going to lead this? Yeah, I'll just start asking questions and going from there. The point that you were just touching on there about how do you out yourself to your family and friends is one of the key questions. Doesn't matter whether it's for older people or younger people. Jumping out from behind the tree and going ta-da is the worst thing you could ever do. And really learning how to manage the thing. I use terms like, now that you've come along to a group like this, you've acknowledged that exists in your life. What you're now doing is, how do I manage it?
And knowing that you've got a base, like a group that you can go back to that, can help you come out. Or if you do come out and it doesn't go well, you've got that support, or you've got that support to celebrate if it does go well.
We're learning your skills now at Y gender, that facilitating.
Yeah.
You've developed a business, I suppose. It's a business concept called TransSpace. So what is that?
TransSpace is a trans health service that I founded now 2 years ago. So it's in Melbourne and Brunswick. We've got a space of health practitioners. So I'm now a psychologist. after 10 years of being at university. It was very long, very slow, but also very fast, the study part. So we've got a whole range of allied health practitioners. We've got dietitians, we've got occupational therapists, physiotherapists, art therapists. So we've got a whole range of multidisciplinary. So we provide health services to trans people in Brunswick, but also online as well.
What was the catalyst for you to say, I want to do this?
So, I mean, I think I've always wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of been planning it for years in the background while I was a provisional psychologist in my training at uni. I was sort of planning it in the background, that kind of thing. So when it came to doing it, like creating the business name, the logo, all that kind of thing, the formalities and finding a space, I was just executing what I'd been planning kind of for years. So the doing part was, the easier part after I decided to take the leap of business. But the will I do it, won't I do it, the jumping off the ledge into business, that was the hard bit. But then the doing it was, once I decided and committed, that for me was the easiest bit.
And so how did you go about sourcing all those other disciplines?
So reaching out to community. I think we have a really beautiful community, the trans community, like word of mouth gets out. So I just went through my networks and said, go through your networks, and sort of just shared and, saw who was interested and things like that, and gave tours of the space. Even before the space was furnished with furniture, I was giving tours, and there were people that saw the space that believed what it could be before it was even furnished. And
you're finding now that you're getting a good number of people rolling through the door, as it were?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't do wait lists, which was something I was very like, we can't do this, because on wait lists people are waiting without any support, and that can be very damaging when you're waiting years and years without any support in the hope that the wait lists will open up. So we don't do wait lists. So if, books are full, we'll refer on to other colleagues that do have space, so that no one's waiting without any support. So we're never like entirely full, like we can always refer to each other and things like that. So, but we're not completely empty, if that makes sense.
One of the things, I suppose, in the last 5 or 6 years in particular, there's, particularly we see coming out of Britain and very severely out of the United States, and there's aspects of it here in Australia, the using trans as sort of like a wedge to generate fear and hate. How's that impacting on the clients that you're seeing?
I think sometimes, it can be common to sort of internalize that kind of hate from other people and things like that. I mean, I think often the case is that hurt people. So why, they're so hateful towards trans people is, I think it says a lot about who they are. Hurt people, and fear, it's often not even to do with trans people. So half of the time it's to do about something else.
Yeah, in some ways it's sort of like, going back years and years, I suppose, over a lot of time, is that, we're allowed to hate people because they're a different colour. Oh, no, we're not allowed to do that more. Oh, who's the next one on the list? Oh, we're not allowed to hate gay people, and here's a real minority. We can use that to express bigotry while saying, oh, look, I'm, or one of the things about bigotry is that quite often it's I'm not a racist, but that type of thing. So why do you think, I can be bigoted against this person just because they look different, but not against that person because they are different?
I think for me, knowing why somebody has the views that they have are really important, because sometimes it's coming from a place that we can work with. Like, I've worked with the parents of trans people where the fear is, they might say some stuff that, we do some work later down the track. They're like, they're so apologetic. It's coming from a place of fear. Often it's fear, and it's wanting the best for their little one, and they're scared that life will be harder for them and the hate that they'll get. So they're quite scared. And then when we address the fears and, actually, why do you feel that way? Tell me more. Sometimes it's, they're misinformed, and you're like, well, actually, evidence-based research says this and this and this, and things like that. And we address and reassure those kind of fears. And then sometimes they become the best ally.
The role that I've played at Seahorse for many years is being a first point of contact. And I've learnt to, I've never been proscriptive or prescriptive in the way of what you should or shouldn't do. It's always you're the only one that knows about you. But here is what other people have done and suggestions. But I've sort of come more to the view of transition is not the be-all and end-all. It's how you make your life work for you, because it's the rest of your life. How do I make it work for me? Whether, in male to female, for instance, is it don't have to go and have surgery. You can maybe, people, you add yourself to so many people, and you say, right, in this circumstance, I will be in a neutral sort of mode, but all the people who are relevant to me know about me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. Because there's no one way to be trans. We're all very different, and that's really beautiful.
Where do you see yourself, say, in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10?
I'm not sure, and that's the beauty of it. The whole that there's no, this is the rigid plan. I'm happy where it will go. I'm sure it'll unfold the way it will. I think sometimes when you have it must be this way and you force it, you might miss out on things. So I'm open to however way it goes. But we're in, I feel really fortunate, that, we're in a really lovely space in Victoria particularly. We're very lucky, and the supports that we have with the trans community, and we really band together in rough times, and I just really love that about our community.
Lee, with that sort of lovely thought about letting life happen, as it were, and taking it from there and enjoying the process.
Rather than the outcome, and they drilled that into us throughout uni. It's not about the outcome, you'll get there anyway, but enjoy the process. And I think that's really nice. The outcome will come through the process.
Oh, that's a lovely way to put it. So thank you for joining me in the conversation tonight. I'm Greer McGeary. My guest has been Lee Taube. Thank you for watching Bent TV.